Can everybody hear me? Good morning, everyone. My name is Nina Pruneda, and I'm a spokeswoman for Homeland Security Investigations for SAC San Antonio. We'd like to welcome each and one of you for attending our media roundtable to discuss weapons trafficking southbound. We just have a couple of housekeeping rules before we begin this presentation. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we stay on topic. If you have any additional questions not geared towards weapons trafficking, we encourage you to visit the different federal PIOs that are here. My colleague who's going to introduce himself with CBP. We also have Melissa Garcia from ATF. And I have the information for the United States Postal Service Inspector, Sylvia Torres. So I have her contact information if you have any questions for her. Make sure you email us, but just to be cautioned that we are traveling back to our home offices today, so we might not be able to get to your requests today, but we'll certainly start working on it. So we ask that you please be patient. We also like to remind you that when you're addressing the participants that you announce your name and the media outlet. For example, we have Antonio Guillen from Univision San Antonio. So something like that. The participants are going to be giving brief remarks about their work in weapons trafficking. And so I'm going to pass the mic out to my colleague here. He's also going to provide instructions for the one-on-ones.
Okay, so my name is Rick Pauza. I'm a public affairs officer for U.S. Customs and Border Protection here in Laredo. So we're glad to have you here for this media briefing. It's a media roundtable type event. So what we'll do is, as Nina explained, we'll have little presentations from each of the different federal agencies involved. At the conclusion of that, we'll have some questions in English, and then afterwards we'll have an opportunity for one-on-ones. We do have officials from CBP and from HSI that can do interviews in Spanish, so we'll have that opportunity. Also, we were, and I'll explain again afterwards, but we'll allow an opportunity for people to take some B-roll of outbound inspections at Juarez-Lincoln Bridge at the conclusion of the one-on-one. So anyway, we'll announce that later on, and that's it.
So the first speaker is going to be our Special Agent in Charge for Homeland Security Investigations. He sits in San Antonio, but he does cover all of South Texas and Central Texas, and that is Craig Larrabee. We'll also introduce the other participants.
Okay, so and to his left we have Gene Crawford. He's the acting DFO for Laredo Field Office for CBP. We have Robert Topper, the SAC for ATF. We have Chief Patrol Agent Joel Martinez representing Laredo Sector Border Patrol. We have Inspector in Charge Scott Fix with U.S. Postal Service. And we have AUSA Michael Makins from U.S. Attorney's Office, Southern District of Texas.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Special Agent in Charge Craig Larrabee with Homeland Security Investigations in San Antonio. The U.S.-Mexico border has faced numerous challenges during the past decades. Traditionally, drug trafficking and the illegal movement activity, both Mexico and the U.S. authorities must leverage their strengths and capabilities to combat transnational criminal organizations, most notably Mexican cartels that exploit the U.S., state, and federal gun laws to traffic dangerous weapons throughout Mexico and Central America. HSI, along with our federal partners, many of whom are here today, continue to work together to disrupt the flow of illegal firearms, many of which are obtained in the U.S. and smuggled into Mexico. To combat this growing problem, HSI and CBP, in partnership with ATF, developed a comprehensive strategy called Operation Without a Trace. Operation Without a Trace is a federal partnership between HSI, CBP, ATF, and the government of Mexico focused on the illicit purchase, transportation, distribution of firearms, firearms components, and ammunition from the United States to Mexico. This operation relies on a three-pronged approach leveraging intelligence, interdiction, and investigative assets to identify, disrupt, and dismantle transnational criminal organizations trafficking in firearms. To date, Operation Without a Trace has been a tremendous success. A major reason for the success of the operation has been the whole-of-government approach. By coming together with a common mission, we've been able to pool our resources and more efficiently and effectively combat trans-border trafficking of firearms and reduce the threat of the illicit trade of these dangerous weapons that presents to the public. Another area where we've made tremendous strides in combating this problem is through public information campaign that we launched back in 2021 to highlight the successes of Operation Without Trace and to ask for the public for their help in reporting suspected firearms trafficking to the HSI tip line. Since the launch of the campaign, we've received tremendous support from the public, which has led to the seizure of illegal firearms that were being trafficked and identification and arrest of numerous key suspects. We continue to encourage the public to report suspected weapons trafficking. Anyone could submit a tip by calling 1-866-347-2423. Spanish translation services are available and callers can remain anonymous. By taking a few minutes to report suspected weapons trafficking, you can help keep these dangerous weapons out of the hands of drug cartels and other violent criminals, and at the same time keep innocent families and individuals safe from gun violence. Although we represent different agencies, we share the same commitment to fighting the epidemic of gun violence that has shattered communities across our country. Disrupting illegal firearms trafficking networks, those that operate within our borders and across them, is central to our efforts. The size and scale of gun and gun trafficking networks we confront demand a united, comprehensive approach. These weapons empower drug cartels to intimidate local communities, challenge state authority, and expand their deadly drug trade back into the United States. Tragically, some of these weapons have used against Mexican security forces bravely seeking to capture cartel leaders responsible for so much death and destruction, both in Mexico and the United States. These cartels are not looking for just any type of firearm to fuel their crime enterprises. They are seeking a level of weaponry that outguns Mexican authorities. Weapons like these present an extreme danger to the public and law enforcement on both sides of the border when they may land in the hands of criminals. HSI remains committed to using all our authorities to prevent the illegal smuggling of firearms and related commodities from the United States into Mexico. We will continue to work closely with our federal partners to investigate, arrest, and prosecute individuals members of dangerous transnational criminal organizations as well. I am grateful for the close partnerships we have here in Laredo and along the southwest border. This effort will make us stronger, safer, together. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eugene Crawford, and I'm the Acting Director of Field Operations for the Laredo Field Office. So we oversee all the ports of entry from Del Rio to Brownsville, Texas. So the CBP officers within the Laredo Field Office work in unison with the federal, state, and local law enforcement partners in the interdiction of southbound weapons and ammunition and lend assistance in their investigation efforts, primarily through the outbound inspections targeting southbound traffic. Now, fiscal year 23 to date, to end of July, the Laredo Field Office from Brownsville to Del Rio has seized over 620 weapons and over 75,000 rounds of ammunition. This figure is more than the previous 2 years combined. So with this, we utilize an effective combination of the hard day-to-day inspection work and experience of our officers, the use of technology and our partnerships with investigative agencies to include HSI and ATF, and our Government of Mexico partners. Our strongest asset by far are our frontline officers. The experience and insight they utilize in the inspection in the outbound environment is paramount in being successful. Along this, we have technology. We utilize large and small non-intrusive inspection equipment, X-rays, to help us detect anomalies within vehicles heading south into Mexico. While it is not realistic to maintain a 24-hour outbound operations, we do operate in a pulse and surge manner in a variety of outbound locations to not only be unpredictable, to make the most efficient use of our available resources and equipment, but to be most effective. We have encountered weapons and ammunition in a variety of locations, deep concealed and in vehicles and in luggage. And some of the areas have been within air compressors within the beds of pickup trucks, within quarter panels of trucks, and even we have seen where people will take apart weapons and hide those parts in different parts of the vehicle, making it more difficult for us to find these. So we employ firearms detector dogs to help us pinpoint where some of these items are. We work with different partners to include Border Patrol agents and our local and state partners to augment our outbound operations. We share information and best practices with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, which they can utilize in the outbound environment and their own operations away from the port of entry to strengthen and complement investigative efforts. Just a few days ago in Del Rio, Texas, officers seized 13,000 rounds of ammunition, just to highlight another effective operation going south into Mexico. So all these efforts are taking place as we try to balance the legitimate trade and travel through the United States of America. Laredo Field Office encompasses from Brownsville to Del Rio, and it takes about 31% of all travelers coming into the United States from Mexico come to the Laredo Field Office. We also have almost 60% of all trade coming into the United States comes to the Laredo Field Office. So it's a fine balance between the legitimate trade and travel and these enforcement operations as we move forward. Thank you for listening.
Sorry, everybody. Good morning. I am Robert Topper, Assistant Special Agent in charge for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, Explosives, Houston Field Division. ATF's mission is to investigate and seek prosecution for illegal firearms traffickers and violent actors. In 2020, ATF founded Operation Southbound to specifically target firearms traffickers with the intent of smuggling firearms and ammunition from the United States into Mexico. The 9 Operation Southbound task forces across the southern border include members of multiple federal agencies, including those agencies that are sitting at the table with me today. They proactively target straw purchasers, firearms smugglers, illicit gun dealers or unlicensed dealers, and privately made firearms manufacturers whose intent is to arm criminal organizations. It's my pleasure to join my colleagues at Customs and Border Protection, Office of Field Operations, Border Patrol, and Homeland Security Investigations, Postal Inspectors, and the United States Attorney's Office today. It's a privilege to discuss some recent successes we've had interdicting southbound firearm shipments and investigating firearms traffickers. These successes would not be possible without the cooperation and collaboration of the agencies represented here today. ATF and our partners are bringing new tools to bear to prevent firearms trafficking. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, for example, was established in 2022 and provides powerful new tools for holding straw purchasers and firearms traffickers responsible for their illegal actions. We are working with our partners to expand firearms tracing programs both domestically and in Mexico to identify offenders and to close trafficking lanes faster than we ever could before. Domestic and transnational criminal organizations need firearms to maintain their territories, transport their contraband, and to rule by fear. When they're prevented from receiving their weapons, they lose strength and influence, and that makes our community safer. Together, we have a collective responsibility to prevent firearms traffickers, to prevent firearms and other tools of the trade from falling into the hands of criminals that would do our communities harm here in the United States and in Mexico. ATF is committed to working with our law enforcement partners to combat these illegal trafficking routes, trends, patterns, and sources. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joel Martinez. I'm the Chief Patrol Agent for the Laredo sector. The Laredo sector encompasses just under 200 miles of border, and we also border with 3 distinct Mexican states, be it Coahuila, Nuevo León, and Tamaulipas. Our area goes all the way up 35 to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Needless to say, even with the increased migrant flow that we're seeing right now, we're still very much engaged in our primary mission, which is border security. I've always said that border security is national security, and national security for both countries, not just ours. The firearms trafficking southbound is a big concern to us, and rest assured that we will do our part to help out my fellow agencies up here, and my agents are very much engaged in that operation. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Scott Fix. I'm the inspector in charge of the Houston Division of the United States Postal Inspection Service. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our efforts to combat southbound firearms trafficking and highlight the partnerships that we see here today. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service is the law enforcement, crime prevention, and security arm of the Postal Service. We work to ensure all customers' confidence in the U.S. mail by enforcing more than 200 federal statutes involving crimes that may adversely affect postal employees or fraudulently use the U.S. mail or postal system. Postal inspectors are federal law enforcement agents who conduct investigations of postal-related crime, such as mail fraud and mail theft, violence against postal employees, revenue fraud, illegal drugs in the mail, and illegal firearms and components in the mail. The U.S. mail is only one of many ways that illegal firearms and components are moved around the country. Our objective is to rid the mail of illicit firearms and components, preserve the integrity of the mail, and most important, to provide a safe environment for our postal employees, the American public, and our counterparts in Mexico. The United States Postal Inspection Service works with our federal, state, local, and international partners, to include those that you see at the table here with me today. We work with them to investigate firearms trafficking, identify trends in firearms movements, and identify parcels containing illegal firearms and remove them from the mail stream. The Postal Inspection Service has an extensive experience and a wide variety of databases to enhance any investigation. Inspection Service personnel are embedded in various intelligence fusion centers to include DEA Special Operations Division, Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, and CBP's National Targeting Center. This collaboration allows us to share intelligence, coordinate cases, and conduct joint enforcement operations to maximize our resources and our impact. Postal inspectors use this intelligence to identify and interdict parcels containing illegal firearms, firearms parts, and ammunition moving between source areas and destination states or international locations, to ultimately arrest those criminals that are responsible, wherever they may be. One of those destination states is Texas, in particular the border regions. Once those firearms parts reach the border, they can then be moved outside the U.S. and into Mexico. Inspectors work closely with our American and Mexican law enforcement partners to stop this movement and enhance the safety of the public on both sides of the border. Since fiscal year 2020, the Inspection Service has seized approximately 1,104 firearms, both sent through the mail and seized instant to those investigations. Additionally, since fiscal year 2020, the Inspection Service has opened approximately 377 investigations and made 210 arrests related to the illegal mailing of firearms. Over the last several years, the Inspection Service has participated in multiple firearms initiatives with our law enforcement partners, examples of which include Operation Southbound and Operation Thor, ATF-led initiatives, Operation Without a Trace, and HSI-led initiative, all of which are designed to target those transnational criminal organization weapons trafficking networks based in the U.S. and Mexico. The goal of these initiatives, as stated, and similar partnerships, are to identify and dismantle these networks, as well as to allow the U.S. and Mexican government to effectively combat these organizations, thereby bringing stability and security to the United States and Mexico. The United States Postal Inspection Service will continue to diligently assist our local, federal, state, and international law enforcement partners to combat the movement of illegal firearms, components, and ammunition through the U.S. mail. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Makins. I'm with the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Laredo, Texas. I'm an assistant U.S. attorney filling in for our U.S. Attorney Alamdar Hamdani. It's a pleasure to be here with all these agencies today. The U.S. Attorney's Office is the Department of Justice's arm here in Laredo, Texas, as well as the rest of the Southern District of Texas, which includes Laredo, McAllen, Brownsville, Corpus Christi, and then as well as Houston. The Southern District of Texas encompasses over 400 miles of border, and it has over 9 million human souls in the Southern District of Texas. And I can tell you that the U.S. Attorney's Office, its number one priority is national security. I think the mic's going out a little bit. Again, our number one priority is national security. And this includes the stem of firearms going into Mexico from the United States. I can tell you that Laredo and other border offices are leading the charge against these firearms going into Mexico. For example, Laredo was the first office, I believe, in the nation to charge, it was mentioned by Mr. Topper, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, 18 U.S.C. 933, which is illegal firearms trafficking. To give you an example of the type of cases that we do from ATF, HSI, CBP, the inspectors with the post office, an individual had been purchasing firearms in the Austin and Houston area, and hundreds of firearms, and he would bring them down to Laredo. He would go to the San Agustin, Placita, and meet with individuals, and then they would then transfer these firearms into Mexico for his cousin, who was a part of one of the cartels down there. We were able to prosecute this individual who had trafficked over 231 firearms into Mexico, and I can say that this was the first successful 933 prosecution in the nation. He was sentenced recently, but this is just one example of all the cases that we do here in the Southern District of Texas with all of our federal agency partners. And I can say that this is a goal that can only be accomplished by all of us working together. So luckily here on the southern border, we have a unique position where all these agencies work very well together. And that's the only way that we can accomplish this goal, is to work well together, whether it be Border Patrol, CBP, ATF, Homeland Security, or the Postal Service. To give another example, yesterday we just had a case in federal court that was sentenced. An individual was shipping over 10,000 rounds of 7.62 ammunition into Mexico. For those that don't know this type of ammunition, it is typically used in an AK-47. But again, I just wanted to stress that our number one priority in the Southern District of Texas is national security. It is stemming the flow of these firearms. Anybody who's lived on the border knows that Laredo and these other places are the gateway to the United States. And us as federal law enforcement, we are the gatekeepers to keep these things out of the United States and out of Mexico as well. Thank you. Sure. It was a case brought to us by ATF. The individual had been, I guess, recognized as purchasing many, many firearms from different FFLs, which stands for Federal Firearms Licensees in the state of Texas. He was in the Houston area going around purchasing firearms. The ATF agents were able to identify him as an individual who may be taking them into Mexico. They were able to put an alert on him to see wherever else he was purchasing these firearms. And then with the help of Border Patrol and state and local law enforcement, they were able to stop him on Interstate 35 on his way to the Mexican border here in Laredo, Texas. And they stopped the vehicle on the side of the interstate. They found several firearms in his vehicle hidden in the panels, as I think CBP was talking about. They hide them in various places of the vehicle. And then through the records that ATF did and they diligently went through, they were able to identify that he had purchased over 231 of these firearms to take into Mexico.
Has anything changed since like 5 years ago?
No, I wouldn't say anything's changed. I think obviously this is a continued need for the cartels and TCOs to continue to get the weapons, as you know. I think Mr. Topper said they can control areas. So there's nothing changed. What we're seeing on our side is a concerted effort amongst all the agencies to work together to try to stop this. So now when you hear about more and more seizures, that's actually a good thing. That is showing that we're out there making those efforts. And I think that that's what you're seeing a lot, because there's a lot more cooperation among the agencies to attack the problem and putting more effort towards it. I mean, the outbound operations that are being done in Laredo are, really, I feel, unprecedented for the times. I mean, they're doing more outbound operations, so that's helping us on our investigative side. When we have investigative information, we provide it directly to CBP, where they can make the outbound operations to do the interdictions, but they're also doing so much on their own as just straight southbound operations, where you're getting a lot more seizures. Yep. Yep. It certainly is possible. I mean, that's that's part of what Operation Without a Trace is. It's an actual reach out to the public to help us. Because really, because there's it's in Texas, you can get your weapons, you can get your ammunition. We need people to call us when something looks suspicious. That's what it's about. It's about having the public both here in the United States and in Mexico reach out to us to provide us information. You're the eyes and ears of what's happening. We're not going to be able to, law enforcement is not going to be able to be in every place at every time. So we need help from the public to call us when we have situations that look suspicious, and reach out to us so we can work together and try to put those people that are involved in that illegal smuggling in jail. I'm not sure on the specifics of those statistics. Those statistics were provided. Yeah.
So on those specific numbers of the 620 weapons and the 75,000 rounds, those are various operations, mostly of us at the ports of entry doing southbound operations. Some of them are just simple pulse and surge operations where we show up, we start inspecting vehicles. Some of them are intel related, but between Del Rio and Brownsville, those are some of the weapons and ammunition that we have caught this fiscal year. So you're 100% correct. There, wherever that you can put something, we're finding things. You're finding them in gas tanks. We're finding them in luggage. We're finding them in air compressors. They're hollowing out the beds of trucks and they're putting weapons inside those. They're putting them in engine compartments. They're disassembling the weapons and putting them in various locations of the vehicle to make it more difficult for us to find these weapons as well. So there is no limit to where they can put their weapons because they're trying everywhere they can.
Just to follow up there, the organizations involved in this have been using different containers and concealment methods to move narcotics into the country for decades. They're using those same techniques to move weapons, parts, and everything else. We always talk about the weapons, but it's also the parts, the ammunition. I mean, if you have weapons and you don't have the ammunition, that's a problem. So we're concentrating a lot of efforts on ammunition seizures as well, and parts and components, because all those pieces, although legal to own and purchase in the United States, they are illegal to ship to Mexico or to smuggle to Mexico. So that's where that becomes, another piece of our puzzle. It's not just the firearm itself. It's all those other pieces and components that are also illegal to ship to Mexico.
So I can tell from the perspective of OFO at the ports of entry, so our bulk of our resources are dedicated to what's coming into the country. Our logistically, facility-wise, it's built for those things coming into the country. Yes, do we use some of our resources going southbound? We do, but it's just a small portion. Again, we have so much on our plate when it comes to protecting the country, but also protecting the economy of the country. So all the trade that's coming in, we need to focus a lot of our resources there. We have to, it's that balance of the legitimate trade and travel of what's coming into the country, but as well as what's going outside of the country as well. So it's a combination of a lot of different things. So part of it is going to be resources. Part of it is just the footprint itself. What we have for outbound operations is nowhere near what we have for inbound operations. And sometimes it's landlocked depending on the facility itself. We can't expand. So there are limitations just with the facility itself. So part of it is resources, part of it is technology, and part of it is the actual infrastructure.
From the investigative side, by combining our efforts with ATF and U.S. Postal Service, you can create better or more intel to provide to CBP for enforcement operations. So the more that we do, so we have concentrated a lot more, as I said before, by creating these operations without a trace and ATF creating their southbound operation. You're putting attention, investigative intention, that becomes intelligence, that becomes targeted operations for CBP, and I think that that's also quite a bit of help to deal with an issue that is, growing.
From ATF's perspective, to answer your question, I'd like to echo what Zach Larrabee said. Our combined efforts are bringing more attention, and they are bringing more seizures, and they are providing more intelligence for to affect seizures and to stem the flow of firearms going south. Additionally, ATF recognizes this problem. We've actually opened up, or we will be opening up an additional satellite office along the southern border to work closer with HSI and with our partners at CBP and Border Patrol to, hopefully make even more of a difference up in that area. Well, that's probably more of a question. That's more of a Second Amendment related question, and unfortunately, I don't have the ability to answer that question for you now. From our perspective, we try to work as close as we can with the firearms industry to and encourage them to keep to pay attention to signs and signals of things like straw purchasers and deny sales to suspect purchasers that are not and to if possible to let us know and so that we can take action if they find something suspicious. So and we do outreach with our federal firearms licensees on a regular basis in order to increase that cooperation. Actually, firearms, as you know, are legal, and we're in the state of Texas, right? It's in the culture of Texas. So one of the primary areas where we're finding people or where we're finding firearms entering the illegal market is actually just in San Antonio, Houston, Austin alone is thefts from vehicles. That's one way. In San Antonio alone, since this calendar year, there's been upwards of 1,800 guns stolen from vehicles in the last just in this year alone. And those guns are either going to remain in San Antonio and used in violent crimes, or they're going to be trafficked to Mexico. There's also, as I mentioned before, straw purchasers. Another issue we have is illicit gun dealers, or as I like to say, unlicensed gun dealers that may allow for the circumventing of background checks rather than dealing out of a store. So there's a lot of sources potentially for firearms to reach the illegal market.
We're going to grab Mr. Larrabee and we're going to grab the gentleman next to him. So I can pull them up. Let's go up a little bit. But you can probably disconnect from that now. Unless they're rolling and they want to get everything back.
They're rolling right now.
They are rolling?
Yeah.
Well, let's keep it on then, just in case.
He wants to get the weapon. These are the random ones.
Oh, you're going to do a group shot? Okay.
Go big or go home.
That's right.
Okay. Can we get the consul to come in?
And then after he's done, I was going to ask you to thank you. On that one. Right there.
Can't put the camera that high. I'm not his height.
Whenever I set up the sticks for him, I'm like, oh wait, I gotta lower those real quick.
I could be ducking a basketball here.
It creates a lot of problems, my height sometimes, you know. Never know what we're doing. There we go.
There, That's for the
There
average
we
height
go.
people.
That's the non-giant size. Give me a white balance.
I can white balance the white balance. And we are recording.
I should have your first, last name, and title, please.
Eugene Crawford, the Acting Director of Field Operations for the Laredo Field Office.
Perfect, thank you. So you were talking a lot about where the ammunition is found. Can you just briefly go over for me what the kind of interesting places or weird places that you guys have seen ammunition or guns be found inside of vehicles?
So there's a wide variety of them, as mentioned. Inside of air compressors, they will disassemble the air compressor and fill it with weapons. We've seen it inside of truck beds where they'll actually disassemble the actual truck bed, pull it out, and then fill it with all types of long rifles and put them in there. Weapons will be disassembled, and so parts of like a barrel will be in the engine compartment. The stock of something will be in other locations. They just use a wide variety of concealment methods to try to smuggle weapons into Mexico.
And you said while you were answering my question during the group that you guys have a much larger section where you investigate or search vehicles that are coming into the country instead of going southbound. Is that something that you guys could shift people around for with the same resources you have, or are there ways to better coordinate finding weapons or whatever is going out of the country instead of what's coming into the country?
So it's going to have to be a combination of all the things as we talk about legitimate trade and travel of things coming into the country as well as things going outside of the country. We have to focus our resources on what is the biggest threat at the moment. So we do go between enforcement operations as well as the legitimate trade and travel. Because through the Laredo Field Office, like I'd mentioned, almost 60% of all trade from Mexico is coming through the Laredo Field Office. So our resources have to be focused in that area, because if not, then it'll cause a huge ripple effect to the economy of the United States when you reduce officers to do those inspections of things coming inbound. So it's a balancing act, and you will move resources back and forth depending on situations and depending on the days.
So how do you guys better correct the problem that we're seeing at the southern border going southbound with weapons going out? If you guys are your hands are kind of tied with the resources that you have in multiple different ways.
So part of the things that we do is intel based, so we can get more focused intel on things, so we can utilize those limited resources that we have. Instead of trying to cover 24/7 at each location, we can do pulse and search with smaller groups and focus in on certain times of the day depending on what intel we're getting from our investigative partners.
When someone in San Antonio hears, all of these guns are going out of the country, why should they care? Why should they care that weapons, ammunition are going out of the country into other groups?
Well, so everything that happens in Mexico will affect what happens in the United States too. So the more guns and the more violence that occurs in Mexico with the cartels, those will affect, again, going back to the economy of the United States, the trade that's going back and forth. When things affect Mexico, and as far as weapons, money, things of those nature, they will affect the economy of the United States as well.
And how can people, civilians, help you guys at the southern border?
So as mentioned by the ICE agent, as if they see something that seems a little odd and they can call and notify somebody, that's going to help us in the long run in protecting both countries.
And what is something that you would define as odd that somebody might be able to see and look out for just as a normal civilian?
So the simple thing is you happen to be at an academy in San Antonio and you see somebody buying 30,000 rounds of ammunition. That's probably going to set off a couple of red flags somewhere. So it's things of that nature.
30,000, that's a lot, huh?
Yes, it is.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm good.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, right. What kind of deer you hunt? Appreciate it. You guys had that this release that came out as 13,400. Yeah. How common is something like that? I should have asked while we were doing this, but how common is a large seizure of that kind?
Actually, more often than not, we're starting to see a lot more of it. You still get those, somebody forgot and they left, a box of ammo in their truck that they were hunting. You do have it, but you're starting to see more and more often for big, larger bulk ammunition situations.
How do you guys kind of figure out which people to stop? Like when you're going southbound, you have so many cars going in and out.
You know, you're right. So part of it is intel based, and part of it is just an officer experience. We've got officers that have been doing this a long time, and they're very good at it. It doesn't take long for them to talk for somebody for just a couple of minutes to realize that something is not.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Absolutely. You too.
All right. Thanks.
Or is it going to be like a caravan over to the border, or just everyone go down there when you're ready?
Yeah, I guess pretty much to make the introduction,
Perfect.
and then typically each side comes in.
Primarily, firearms.
One more? All right, sweet. Gotta be on the other side of the room if that's okay. Yep, right over here.
Back up just a little bit, but have him exactly where the other guy was.
Okay. I'll stand over here. How's it going? Labor room or rotator cuff? Been there.
Did it Tuesday.
Got the surgery Tuesday? Oh, so you're still in that really, really uncomfortable stage.
Quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, he's here. I had my supraspinatus rotator cuff and my labrum and bicep all done at once.
Didn't do the biceps, so
That's it.
did a lot of shaving of a lot of bone.
Yeah.
So far it's okay. I mean,
The worst part was like the 24 hours, 36 hours when that pain blocker or the whatever that was, yeah, it wears off.
that wore it off last night.
Yeah, 13 hours afterwards, and you're just like,
So far it's okay.
ready to roll? All right. Make sure that's on. All right. Can you just give me your first, last name?
Yeah.
Hold that if you want.
Craig Larrabee, Special Agent in Charge, Homeland Security Investigations.
So, if anything, what do you want people to take away from what you guys are doing here today?
I want people to understand that this is a big problem. Firearms legally being smuggled into Mexico is fueling the violence in Mexico. It's emboldening the cartels, the transnational criminal organizations. It's allowing them to control areas, terrorize communities. And so that's what we want people to understand. And there's opportunities for the public. If you see something that doesn't look reasonable or you find it suspicious, you can call. We can use that information. Law enforcement can't be everywhere at every time. So if you see something that looks suspicious, that you think that there's part of an illegal transaction, moving weapons that may be leaving the country, that you provide our hotline, and you can call and help us with this effort.
For people in San Antonio,
Yeah.
some of them may think, oh, the border's 3 hours away, 5 hours away, whatever direction you want to go.
Yeah.
Why should I care about what's leaving the country? I only care about what's coming into the country.
Well,
what do you say to people like that?
I think, particularly in San Antonio, I mean, we're only 2 hours from the border, to Laredo, 2.5 hours. A lot of the crime that happens in San Antonio is border related. We have thefts of vehicles, we have thefts of firearms from vehicles, and those vehicles are often going south, or they're going to help the illegal human smuggling. It's also sometimes the weapons are actually taken directly south, or the vehicles are taken directly south to arm the cartel or for the cartel to use. It all affects all of South Texas, including San Antonio.
You guys have the table over there.
Yes.
The mass amounts of weapons. Are all of those ones that have been confiscated at the southern border, and how common are weapons like that to be taken across?
Unfortunately, it's way too common. Those have all been seized within the last year or so, and that's just a fraction of what we see. So that's very common, and unfortunately, a lot of the weapons are sourced from San Antonio and the communities around San Antonio.
I asked during the press conference as well, when I asked you one-on-one, much of the attention is on what's coming in, whether that be human smuggling or whether that be drugs or migrants or whatever the case may be. While people may not care as much about what's going out, what attention needs to be brought to that?
Well, from an investigative standpoint, HSI investigates the organization. So that organization, we're going to investigate all of their illegal activity. So for their illegal activity, they're smuggling narcotics into the United States. They're still smuggling their cash back. They're smuggling the weapons back. So we look at it from an entirety. So you should be concerned about all of it. I mean, you don't sell narcotics unless you want something for them, and that is the bulk cash or the financing that's getting illegally sent back to Mexico. There would be no reason to sell narcotics if you weren't getting paid. So that's a big piece of that outbound, and the weapons that are going to also fuel that ability to control that area, terrorize the community. So you should care about both sides of it. And from an investigative standpoint, all we're doing is we're looking at that organization in anything they're doing illegally. We're trying to investigate and bring to light and bring to justice.
How helpful do you think things like this can be in trying to shed a light on something that you guys need help with from the public?
I think this is the only way that we can get help. We can't be everywhere at any time, all the time. So the public is aware that this is a big effort of ours and that we're trying to stem the flow of weapons into Mexico. Then the public should, we'll benefit from the public's participation in our cause.
And I asked the last question, I asked Mr. Crawford this as well. Yeah. You guys have both said, if you see something odd, call. Yeah. What is something odd? Do you have an example of maybe something that someone might see that they could call in?
Sometimes you'll see somebody, you'll have a group of people show up to someplace and only one person will go in to make the purchase of the ammunition, and it'll be a bulk pack of ammunition. Then you'll come back out, you're not buying for yourself. If you see that something looks like somebody's being asked to buy a weapon or buy ammunition for somebody else, that's one of the biggest red flags that we see.
Gotcha. Anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask, we have this number, like one seizure of 13,000 rounds of ammunition. Do you guys have how much ammunition or weapons have been confiscated in the past year?
I can get that and then I can email you.
Perfect, that'd be great. Yeah, here's a card.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care of that arm.
I will.
6 months.
Yeah. 6 weeks, I was told.
6 weeks in the cat, in the sling. 6 months until you're good to go.
You're younger.